Hello. Okay, this is about the Paul is dead thing. There's, like I want a video on here that describes it real good. There's some really good visuals and things like that, but unless you read a book, it's just not going to make any sense. I wanted to make a video that's a little bit more comprehensive than the other options out there on YouTube. So the story starts. So I'm talking about the legend that's in the music, which is the lyrics, the music in general, and the album covers. So not how the people discovered it or any of that stuff, but just like the actual legend itself. That's what I want to talk about. So the story, a lot of the story is in the Sgt. Pepper's album. Okay. So I think the best place to start the story, the first clue though, is in Rubber Soul. Okay, the album Rubber Soul, which is just before Sgt. Pepper's. The song, I'm looking through you, you're not the same. Your lips are moving, but the words are changed. The only difference is you're down there. I'm looking through you, you're not the same. So like down there, because he's in the grave. It's not, your lips are moving, that's not really Paul. So that's an example of how there can be clues before the Sgt. Pepper's album, but really the majority of the clues and the bulk of it is more like a Sgt. Pepper's, especially Sgt. Pepper's, but actually all the albums from Sgt. Pepper's on are just steeped in clues all over the place. Just the albums, inside and out, just all over. Okay, so we're gonna start the story of Sgt. Pepper's. He blew his mind out in a car. Da-dun, 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 dun. He didn't notice that the lights had changed. That's where the story starts. So Palma, if you look at the cover of Sgt. Pepper's, there's a doll, and the doll's wearing a shirt that says, "Welcome the Rolling Stones." If you look on the doll's lap, is it a yellow or a white sports car with a blood red interior. Okay, so supposedly Paul McCartney was driving that sports car through an intersection and he didn't notice that the lights had changed and he blew his mind out. The song, fixing a hole where the rain gets in, it stops my mind from wandering. Many of the clues are about head injuries. Like on the White Album, it has Paul McCartney sitting in a bathtub. It looks like his head's bleeding, and there's like some pictures inside albums where it looks like Paul's head is cut off from his body and stuff like that. So all the clues that have to do with head injuries is because he blew his mind out in a car. He died of head injuries because he didn't notice that the lights had changed. And that happened on Tuesday. You go to Magical Mystery Tour, the song I Am the Walrus. Tuesday, bloody Tuesday. So it happened on Tuesday, but then Wednesday morning at 5 o'clock when the day begins. And then she goes downstairs clutching a handkerchief. So that's it. Wednesday morning at 5 o'clock the next day, the policeman goes to Paul McCartney's house and lets Paul McCartney's wife know that Paul McCartney is dead. That's why she's going down the stairs with a handkerchief. So now everybody knows Paul McCartney's dead, and the Beatles are like, oh no, this multi-million-dollar business and one of our key players is dead. Okay? And so what should we do? So they had a plan. They said, I know, I guess this part's not really in the lyrics, but they had a plan. They said, I know, let's have a look-alike contest. And we need to get somebody to play to fill Paul's position. So they had a look-alike contest, and Billy Shears won as William something. He has two different names. I can't remember the details on that. His name's William something, and Billy Shears is the same person. So what it is he was not just any ordinary person. He was a famous musician. He was actually an American. There was a famous musician in England. I believe he was in England. I could be wrong about that, but he was a famous musician already. Very talented. and he looked just like Paul McCartney. So they're like, oh wow, he looks like Paul McCartney and he's already a musician, he's perfect. So they gave Billy Shears plastic surgery to make him look even more like Paul McCartney. So like we know that because the person that calls himself Paul McCartney now has scars that are plastic surgery scars. And if you compare pictures, for one thing, the old Paul is shorter. It's like all of a sudden Paul's taller. All of a sudden he's like 2 or 3 inches taller. So if you look at the old pictures of when all the Beatles are standing next to each other, Paul McCartney is the short guy. And if you look at every picture after that, all of a sudden he's the tall guy in the back, and he's skinny. His nose is a different shape. His ears and earlobes are all different shape. And the Paul McCartney that's now has plastic surgery scars on his face. So if you look at some of the clues online, they don't explain things, okay? That's why I'm doing this video. That's why there's all these things that show the scars on Paul McCartney's face. They're scars from the plastic surgery, okay? And then there's information about Billy Shears and who Billy Shears was, and not William Blake, what's his name? William something. Okay, so then that's basically the story. Then he plays the music and he's Paul McCartney from that moment forward. So now just real quick before I end this, just some really classic clues. The best clue in one of these videos on this playlist, it shows that someone noticed that if you put a knife on the cover of Sgt. Pepper's, there's a big drum and it says Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. It says Sgt. Pepper's, then in the middle it says Lonely Hearts, and then on the bottom it says Club Band. Someone noticed that if you get the Lonely Hearts part and you put a knife on it so that it reflects on the knife, it says one, like a line, then it says one, O-N-E, then there's another line, one, and then there's an X. So one, the word one, X. And then there's like a diamond that points up to Paul McCartney because they're all above the drum. It points up and it's to Paul McCartney. And then it says he die. So one of the 4 Beatles are X'd out with an arrow pointing to Paul McCartney. He die. So that's when it shows that, look close at it and notice that it says that. That's fantastic. I don't know how they come up with that stuff. Another big one is the license plate on the Beetle, the Volkswagen Bug. The Volkswagen Bug thing on the cover of Abbey Road. It says 28 if. And if Paul McCartney the original Paul McCartney were alive when they made Abbey Road, he would have been 28 years old. If you flip the Abbey Road record around where it says Beatles, there's these dots like that. If you connect the dots, it says three Beatles. If you look in all over Sgt. Pepper's, when it has all the Beatles, Paul McCartney's always has his back turned. And then he's also wearing a shirt, wearing like a police uniform thing, and it says OPD, like officially pronounced dead. And then like, who's the walrus? The walrus is the pagan symbol of death. Who is the walrus? And like, later, John Lennon says, "I've got news for you all. The walrus was Paul." Because it's John Lennon that says, "I am the walrus, cuckoo kachoob." So it's like, but the walrus, he later admits, was actually Paul. Let's see. Another big famous one is just the cover of Abbey Road. If you look at him, Paul McCartney's barefooted, because a lot of people bury dead people barefooted. There's like someone to dig the grave. I think that's George. There's like a priest. I think that's John Lennon. There's each of the way they're dressed. Each one is dressed in a way that represents one of the different roles someone plays in a funeral. That's a really famous one. So then, as far as John Lennon selling his soul to the devil, so you have to study these things one at a time. Personally, I believe both things happened. And I don't see any evidence to prove that it's not both things, okay? John Lennon had an obsession with number 9. all through that, and it's seen as a big clue. But some of the big clues about that is the album Revolver, Paul, and there's clues on here. Okay, like like the one with the Ouija board, where it shows John saying the name of the guy that's going to kill him. There's another picture inside. Which album is that? It says, if you're going to go, the way to go is with, and then it has the initials of the guy that's going to kill him. The Revolver album, he gets killed with a revolver. And then he just always was the dark one, And there's just that's a really cool subject. There's a book that you read on it. What was it called? I can't remember. I would recommend you read that book. It's not hard to find. Once you're aware of these things, you can how these things are nowadays. You can gather the information. I think I've given you enough of a lead on the Paul is dead part. From there, you can look at the information on YouTube, and you'll be able to piece it together. Now that you have it, I've made it so plain. The John Lennon Soul to Soul the Devil part, I'd recommend just get the book. It's a little bit more complicated, but there's equally as many clues on that one. Probably a little less, but there's a lot of clues. I think it's both things. Both things happened. John Lennon Soul to Soul the Devil. The Beatles got really big, but then this big thing that happened had the catastrophe of one of the members dying, so they just incorporated that into the whole thing. So anyway, that's the scoop.